just try to think a bit more about it. What is Iqbal challenging? Concept of time, not only in Einstein theory of relativity, concept of time as an abstract notion, mathematical notion, concept of time as a conventional notion of time, time as a linear progression. It's challenging all these in a way which do sound counterintuitive, at least to a certain extent. Okay, so what is the core idea? Allama Iqbal, core idea in terms of what is for in this conception of time and what he is rejecting, what is he against. Let's try to think about it. So Allama Iqbal's understanding is, again, we are not saying that that understanding is partially or entirely true, but for him, so there is two conception of times: static, probably static, and dynamic. So he is for dynamic conception of time. He doesn't say that we can't use a static conception of time for scientific purposes, but what he is objecting to is, I think, considering this time conception of time as the true representation of what time is actually in total. Again, which is not to say that he is correct in his assessment. That's what the theories he is critiquing do. Okay. On the other hand, dynamic, so in time as a in static conception of time, time is not a dynamic flow. So it's not like a in his poetry, often Allama Iqbal expresses time and its flow through rivers and their flow through mountains, especially in the context of Himalaya and Kashmir, where his forefathers originally come from. So it is not something, a static conception is not something which moves, in which time moves. Or ellipses, as we usually perceive it, I think from a subjective viewpoint. Okay, so this is the first point. So if events don't happen, according to Iqbal, in this conception of time, he is critiquing. It can imply two things, and probably he is critiquing, rejecting only one aspect. So events don't happen can imply that they don't come into existence sequentially. So probably even this one is critiquing. So so probably the view he is critiquing believe that they do come into existence sequentially. But the main thing is, I think, critiquing is we simply meet them. So if we simply meet them, that implies that as we said yesterday, pre-existing reality, where all events past, present, and future already in a way coexist. So he basically reject this conception of reality, and he's rejecting static conception of time, because he thinks that that implies this conception of reality is, for him, reality is being created all the time, and being created, being and creation for him means something not pre-existing, something which probably even the creator, if there is one, doesn't know. So if he knew, then for Allama Iqbal, this is not a creativity. It's actually not just it. This critique has implication not just for Einstein theory, but also for the notion of qada and qadr in Islamic teachings. Okay, so let's go back to the text. Time as a free creative movement has no meaning for this theory. For the theory, it doesn't pass. Time doesn't pass, according to the theory. Events don't happen. So that's the interpretation of passing. We simply meet them. So it's not just a critique of a conception of time, but a critique of a conception of reality purportedly implied by that conception of time. So, and here he goes explicitly, it must not, however, be forgotten that the theory neglects certain characteristics of time as experienced by us. So that's where subjective experience, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't represent reality, but that's the experience that's the dimension of time which can only be experienced subjectively, cannot be described mathematically. So the theory misses that, obviously. Although again, it's not entirely true that Einstein doesn't have, like when he talks about time from his theory of relativity from a layman's perspective, even from a philosophical perspective, he does in his writings, Einstein does mention a subjective conception of time. So it must not, however, be forgotten that theory certain time as experienced by us, and it's not possible to say that the nature of time is exhausted by the characteristic which theory does not in the interest of systematic account of those aspects of nature which can be mathematically treated. So that also makes clear that he is not rejecting a mathematical conception of time as useful, or even as a true representation of aspects of time, but what he is critiquing is any philosophical viewpoint which claims that this conception of time exhausts the reality of time. So probably he will view like philosophical views like determinism and eternalism, for example. Nor is it possible for us laymen to understand what the real nature of Einstein time is. It's obvious that Einstein time is not Bergson's